what are we missing from this whole global movement? Why are we not moving from the very interesting thousands of cases that we have around the world? It is happening everywhere. But why are we moving to that transformational stage? So that is why I started to think about some of the questions. I'm going to share with you some ideas. Interestingly, I have a revolution in my slide, but I may have it on the wrong side, so we'll talk about it when we reach there. So this is how I structured my presentation. I prefer to talk in terms of transformation rather than revolution, because that is what we need to have. And that is what has happened, in fact, in our history also. Social transformation has brought us where we are today. There were major social transformations that happened in human history. And if we go and look back, what were the major drivers? There is a lot of lesson that we could take from those social transformations. And even the challenges are very much similar. So I briefly talk about the social transformation, how I conceptualize it in today's world, and then go to Africa-specific issue. And there are some key intervention focus which I would highlight towards the end of my presentation. I will start with this table, which it has a lot of information in it. Basically, what I did is, at the cosmic level, how are we interacting? When you think in terms of systems thinking, one of the principles behind systems thinking is hierarchy and interaction. You need to understand the hierarchical interactive relationship between the different elements of a system in order to come up with a workable solution. So abiotic systems or elements subsets starting from the atoms, the simplest, to the most complex. The biotic one starting from the cell to the most complex organ. The social starting from the family to the wide complex social structures. And the economic starting from the firm to the largest corporation. You can go through those different levels of analysis depending on the kind of system boundary you develop around it. And each of these systems, there is a lot of interaction between it, and they have a process behind them. And there is a flow behind them. So understanding those processes and flows is the basis for understanding any system. When you define a system, the hierarchy, the interaction, the processes, and the flows. These are the key variables you need to manage. And each of the systems have their own regulating mechanisms. The abiotic natural cycles, biotic mobility and succession, social policies and regulation, economic market mechanisms. These are the typical features of the systems we have. If you come to today's situation, we are in this zone, the non-stable parameters. When the processes, regulating mechanisms, and the flows operate harmoniously, you have a stable system that evolves with the changes that are happening around it. But when that stability is affected, there are non-stable parameters that exhibit themselves as indicators. When you push a system beyond its stability point, it tries to go back to that stability point. And all the disturbance in natural cycles, the migration we see, the social unrest and conflicts, the economic recession we see today, these are, for me, those non-stable parameters. Our challenge is to manage that. And if you don't manage that and over-push it, the correcting mechanisms kicks in. So that is the system correcting itself. Our planetary system has its own correcting mechanisms. So the challenge we have today is, are we smart enough to manage the non-stable parameters and avoid the kicking of that correcting mechanism, which is beyond our control? Once it kicks in, you are under the mercy of that. Every one of us, globally. And that is where the challenge we have today in terms of the transformation that we have. And this has happened, by the way, during the early agricultural transformation, the industrial transformation. You see those kind of features and characters. So essentially what I am saying is, basically based on the existing data, there are thousands of data, scientifically generated data, which clearly indicate that we are at the moment of that social transformation, which we cannot stop it. It is only a question of creatively managing it or being under the mercy of that change. And we believe that the green economy, which we are talking about, it is about that social transformation process that we need to have at a global scale and local scale. Before going into the leapfrogging part, I'm sure most of you have seen this earlier, but this is a relationship between the Human Development Index and the ecological footprint that countries have. And most of the African countries are here, the yellow ones. We are still under the global world average biocapacity of the ecosystem in terms of its regeneration and assimilation capacity. And I don't need to tell you which is the top red one. I'm sure you would guess. The challenge we have is, how can we move from here to this side of the curve, which is about achieving higher human development index, having higher social well-being within the biocapacity that we have. And by the way, this is a shifting biocapacity. Depending on how we manage our ecological natural capital, it can move upwards, it can go downwards. So that's how it is indicated as a dashed line. Let us come to the African context. Some of the factors that are, so basically the earlier part is social transformation is here, it's coming, it will happen. In that context, Africa has a unique opportunity to leapfrog from this side to this side, to this box. We have that unique opportunity as a region. And it comes from the low lock-in inertia due to the lower level of infrastructural development. Earlier it was mentioned that, Bob mentioned that the African cities, the infrastructure is yet to be built. 75–80% of the infrastructure is yet to be built. And we have the possibility to build that infrastructure in a more resource efficient and sustainable way. We are technology beneficiaries because the technologies we need to address most of the existing environmental problems are already here. We have them. They are available. So we are beneficiaries of this technology and knowledge system, which is available out there. Africa's natural ecosystem, as much as it is fragile, the resilience capacity of the African ecosystem is higher. And we have seen it happening, lakes and wetlands disappearing within 10 years and coming back within 5 years if they are properly managed. So the resilience capacity of African ecosystem is significant. And we also feel that, I believe that Africa has more connectivity to the natural ecosystem around them. So we have that affinity towards sustainability, which is in our social structure, which is beneficial. The natural resource endowment we have, again, provides us a good basis to have that leapfrogging reality. The renewable energy potential we have in this region is very, very significant, which is more than sufficient that of the requirement we have within the region. The mineral resource, biodiversity, the overall natural resource. We have significant natural capacity, natural capital that we can utilize for this leapfrogging. What are the key intervention focus? This is my last slide before the conclusion. I rushed because I want to come to this point. I identified 4 blocks of interventions, which are fundamental for transformational process, for social transformation. They were fundamental during the agricultural revolution. They were fundamental during the industrial revolution, and they will be fundamental for the sustainability transformation. The first one is maintaining and building the ecological foundation, the ecological capital foundation, through ecosystems-based adaptation for food security, because food security is top on the agenda in the African context, feeding the African population. And as I showed you earlier on that dash line, if African countries would like to develop and improve their human well-being, they have to push that dash line upwards. The biocapacity of Africa has to be pushed. Otherwise, with the current population we have, with the current practice we have, we'll overshoot it. We'll go beyond that. So building our ecological foundation is the most critical step that we need to focus on. The second one is the infrastructure part. Within it, the energy dimension. Because again, energy is the most critical factor in any social transformation process. Our humanity transformation has been dependent on energy. First, we found fire. Then we found the animal energy to use domestication and farming and so on. Then we found coal, which led to the steam engine and the early industrialization. Then we found petroleum, which led to the diverse chemical products that contributed to our well-being. So if you look at the pattern, how we moved from one energy resource to another energy resource, it was the critical factor in the social transformation history of our society. And the transition we need to have today is number one in the African context. In the global context, we have to decarbonize our economy. The global economy has to be decarbonized. We have to take out the carbon in our economic system, because that is what is leading to global warming, climate change, and everything. So decarbonization of the global economic system is a requirement. On the other side, in the African context, we have to ensure energy security. We have to deal with energy poverty. We talk a lot about poverty reduction in the African context. But without addressing energy poverty issue, it will just be a talk. Providing energy to individual citizens is the most empowering action that any government can take. If any government is serious about poverty reduction, you can measure it with the way they put investment on energy. Just an example, South African government, the other mistake we are making, with the good intention of providing energy to the majority of the population, we expand the grid-based energy provision across the country. When you expand grid-based energy provision, the energy loss you have increases double. If it was 30%, as you go to more dispersed area with grid connection energy provision, you lose higher energy. The problem you have in the South African energy system is the grid-focused energy provision that was promoted. Good intention, but bad result. So decentralized, renewable energy-based, generating energy at the place where it is available and where it is needed, reducing the energy loss of the whole system is critical for the transition we need to have in Africa. So if any government is interested in working in this transformation, they have to work on their energy sector. The third component is the production system that we have today, which is largely influenced by FDI, mass production, concentrated, with a very inefficient distribution system behind it that is contributing to the carbon accumulation in the system. The shift we need to have is, yes, you need to have that mass production, but we have to move towards distributed production systems, bringing production to the consumption area, utilizing local raw materials, creating jobs at the local level. Yesterday when we were walking around visiting this place, I take this hotel as an example of that initial idea of distributed economic system. And instead of having it in the tourist area central, they chose to come here. And instead of sourcing the material they need to have for the service delivery, they decided to limit it to 80 kilometers. So you contribute to the local economy. You create jobs. You create that symbiotic relationship that you need to have for any economic system, servicing the broader goal of social development. Finally, the last box, the innovation system that we have today, which is very much piecemeal technology driven. I'm a chemical engineer by background. I love technology. I've been working in technology area, but the system we have today is not something which will serve us for the transition we need to have. So there is a need to move from technologies to technology regimes. When you talk about technology regimes, you bring the social dimension strongly. You work on technology development with the sole purpose of improving well-being and bring the users into the design process. And that is how information has to be structured. And the importance of social innovation becomes critical in this process. It's not only how you develop technology, but how is it going to be used out there by society. And by the way, these 4 boxes particularly are related to another concept I have. In our economic system and in our social transformation process, the 3 most critical flows in terms of flowing, are energy, materials, and information. And any economic system is dependent on how these flows are structured and managed. So our efficiency and transitional impact is very much dependent on how we manage these flows. And that is where we need to go, to the fundamentals, to the key elements that will influence a number of things behind that. Final concluding point Humanity is faced with confluence of challenges that shall determine the future of our planet. And this can only be addressed through transformational process. And the seeds of this transformational process are sprouting across the world, everywhere. 2 weeks back, I was in China, visiting 2 provinces, the Hubei and Shanghai, sprawling urban centers. But even in that country, actions such as we visited yesterday afternoon are happening there also. People are creating their own sustainable community area space where it is open for everybody. At one of the places, there is a plantation of fruits. You pay a door price, door fee. You'll be given a bag, sustainable bag, and you can pick as much as you like, all fruits. You just pick from the trees. And the feeling that gives when you are involved in that action, you just take a lemon, an orange, an appleton, and everything. That is the kind of connection that we need to have in our urban sprawl. And there are key opportunities that would enable African countries to leapfrog to a more resource-efficient, inclusive, and sustainable economic systems. And promoting local creativity and social innovation at all levels is a key part of this transformation. And I consider all of us to be part of that transformational process in different ways. Thank you very much for your attention.